Welcome back to The Circle, the podcast where we go all in on men's work, embodiment practices, and personal growth from our queer perspective. If you're enjoying the show, please be sure to share your favorite episode, leave a review, and subscribe. And if you have a question about anything you heard us talk about, please send us a message. We'd love to hear from you. And now on to today's show. Today we're exploring urgency, how it can be the spark that calls us to action or the gust that blows us over. Where is that line between moving with purpose and rushing? And how do we stay steady when the pressure to move arises? Tim, are you ready to go all in?
I'm ready.
All right. So something I've heard you say to me multiple times in the course of us working together is that you really dislike feeling rushed.
Mm-hmm.
And I can totally relate because summer is right around the corner and I'm in the middle of a move. So I totally get it. But what I've also seen is you move very quickly.
Thank you.
And so I'm curious.
Thank you very much.
So I'm curious, what's the difference between the two for you?
Thank you for that question because I was thinking about this earlier and I recognized that urgency was a tool that I would use as a closeted queer person for safety and protection. I could use urgency, and this is, I think I was the perfectionist, the good guy, the person trying to be excellent, and then I could use urgency to avoid some really intense conversations, especially if I was giving urgency to the things that the people around me thought I should value. This is not a real example, but I have to. I can't talk about that right now. I have to go to football practice. Would be an easy out, a way to go. So I do want to start by saying I think that urgency can be a thing that we learn, a tool that we use to keep us safe, to keep us hidden, but not hidden in the moment. It makes sense. We're doing it so that we don't get called out or discovered or, and then we have to reimagine our relationship with it when we start to recognize, okay, well, it used to be this for me. Now what is it? Because urgency can also be a tool for perfectionism, a tool for needing to be excellent in every way, and a way of getting out of things that we can all sort of agree on. And then as an adult, they may no longer serve us. We have to reconceptualize our relationship with it.
What I heard in your earlier story was like creating a sense of urgency and creating a stimulus that can tip somebody else into a behavior. So by saying, I can't talk to you right now, I have to go over here, we're creating a sense of urgency, manufacturing a sense of urgency, bringing in that breeze of an urgent stimulus that then somebody can react to. And so that reaction, in that case, could be, I'm creating this sense of urgency both for myself and the other person, and now I get to escape out of here, right? But urgency being the external stimulus.
Right. Yes. So you heard me correctly. And I believe that urgency can also be a thing that we employ in the pursuit of our purpose and passion. So now I feel personally like I'm hiding less, that I'm using urgency less to avoid a tough conversation or a revelation about me. And now my life, because as you said, I do move quickly. I also, full disclosure, lived in New York City for 25 years. Like, I move quickly. It just feels comfortable to me to move quickly. And I sometimes feel annoyed when people don't move quickly. But the reason I'm moving quickly now is because I'm often running from one thing to another thing that I really love, that I care about, or that I think is adding value. And yeah, there is part of it that's like, I have to pay my bills. I have to, do the things to make it all work. But there's another part of like, I'm running to these things and I'm doing these things because I think they make the world a better place.
Right. So you can move quickly and are moving quickly with a sense of purpose that has been created through urgency versus it being, I am rushing to something, I'm hurrying to the next thing where I've maybe lost presence, I'm not in the moment, and I'm just trying to get to the outcome and trying to get to the desired thing. Right. And
Yeah.
I'm right. Like
Yeah,
there's
yeah.
there's a difference between moving quickly
Mm-hmm.
with purpose, passion, in pursuit of something.
Yeah.
Which urgency can be that catalyst for that movement. It can be that spark that calls us to action. Urgency can also tip us into rushing, hurrying, missing out.
Well, I
And,
will. Yeah.
and
So,
both can be quick, right?
yeah,
You can move quickly.
sure. So there was a moment a few weeks ago where I was feeling very rushed, and something had popped up. Like I think I was leaving the house or leaving the gym. Something had popped up. Suddenly, I had to be somewhere with less time than I thought, and I started moving really quickly. And then my actions got unskillful, and I'm like, oh, I'm actually taking longer now because I'm trying to move so fast that I'm not tying my shoes correctly or putting things in my backpack correctly. And I had to say, I'm like, Tim, you have to slow down to be able to move efficiently because there is probably a cap. There's no science around this that I know. Probably a cap around how quickly I can move and have it still be skillful versus haphazard. And I was definitely out of skillful. That's one thing. But the other thing I want to mention is, in the yogic tradition, in Ayurvedic tradition, in Chinese medicine tradition, I think in a lot of traditions, there are also constitutions. So I'll talk about in yoga, there's tamasic, rajasic, sattvic, and mirrored in Ayurveda, this sort of like, are you sort of like earthy and wet? Are you like fiery? Are you airy? I'm a very fiery person. Um, Kind of universal over all these systems. I'm like totally fiery. And so it is in my nature to move more quickly. So when we talk about urgency, we also have to recognize, well, urgency for me and how it presents in me is probably really different than if you are a more tamasic person from one perspective, or if you're a cold, damp person in the Chinese medical perspective. I am not cold and damp. So, and by the way, like, yeah, it's funny because like we use these terms and they can sound like a judgment. They're not. They're observations of the world and different qualities. But a cold and damp person will typically move slower, and I'm dry and fiery. I move quickly. I also can then burn out more quickly. And my teacher told me I would die earlier, which was like a really sweet, shocking moment, but I appreciated it. So it's not like none of these are good or bad. They just recognize what is and then how you want to work with it. So when we talk about urgency, urgency comes easy to me. And I suspect there are other people for whom it is more uncomfortable, more challenging, feels farther away. And I'm actually interested now to hear, what is your relationship to urgency? How does it feel for you when you feel like you have to move quickly?
Yeah, I think urgency, again, my personal take on this is urgency is a neutral catalyst and external catalyst. It can also be internal. I guess we can create a sense of urgency within ourselves. It's how then we respond or react that can be skillful or unskillful. And so, what I like to say is that urgency can tip us into rushing, hurrying, being sloppy, being unskillful, or we can take it and we can move with purpose. So, I actually love the fire example because urgency can be a spark. It
Hmm.
can be a spark that lights you up and says, oh, I need to take action. And that action can be quick. The difference between quick, purposeful action and sloppy, haphazard rushing is the intention of which we're doing the thing. Are we rushing to a finish line and we're so out of the present moment that we can't see that we're fumbling with our shoelaces because we're like, oh, my brain is not here on my shoelaces. My brain is at the thing that I'm trying to get to. Versus, oh, I know that I need to move quickly. And so I'm going to ground myself in the present moment, and I'm going to move with purpose and intention and passion. And I'm going to do things that way.
And you've had both experiences.
Yeah, totally.
Are you open to talking about the physical embodied experience of each and how they differ?
Absolutely. When I'm in a rushed experience, there was a time that I was training as a bartender that I was trying to keep pace with the other bartenders. And so the environment around me was creating this sense of urgency in me. And I didn't have the skills to bartend at that velocity. And so instead of grounding myself and moving through the process at my speed, I was rushing and I was spilling drinks everywhere. And so the feeling that I was experiencing was there was such a constriction in my body. I was like my hands were shaking. Everything was like fumbly and stumbly. Like my motor skills were lacking because I think I was just so in my head and heart was anxious and tight that I was unskillful in my movements. Right. And then there are other times that, like, even coming here to the podcast, right? I was running a couple minutes behind because I realized that, oh, my Jeep wasn't in my driveway. I had parked it a couple streets down because I had a friend staying with me who was using the driveway. I didn't account for that. And so that I needed to move quickly in order to pick you up on time, in order to be here on time. And so I didn't rush. I wasn't in this mindset of, oh my gosh, hurry, 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 where I'm like fumbling when grabbing my keys and all this stuff. I moved quickly. I grabbed my cell phone. I grabbed my bag. I grabbed my keys. I grabbed my water and I moved. And I just took it one step at a time. And I recognized that, like, oh, I can move fast and still be here in this moment. I understand my destination. I understand where I'm trying to get to, but I'm not letting it completely cloud my vision of where I'm at.
I went one time to an Al-Anon meeting. I've only gone to one. But it's a great example because I was younger at the time and running late. And so I was biking really quickly. Oh, I was on a city bike and I couldn't find a dock. I actually, because I'm really good with time, had given myself plenty of time, but then all the docks were full. And it ended up making me late. And so then I ended up running to this meeting and getting there right on time, which mattered to me because I was told you're supposed to be on time. And time integrity matters to me. But then it was like a rainy, like cold spring day, I think. And I get to this meeting and then I cough like loudly through the whole meeting. And in my share, which I had never done before, I kind of explained, I'm like, I'm so sorry, And I talked about it with my therapist later and realized, oh, right, I had this idea of what was important, which was I show up on time. Would it have been better for me to arrive 2 minutes late and not cough? Because I coughed through the whole thing. And I have a loud cough. Like I can't demonstrate it right now. That would be real, and I reflected later and thought, oh, it might have been of greater service for me to make a different choice. But in the moment, I'm the good boy who shows up on time. That's who and what I am. And so I showed up on time and then coughed through everybody's share, and including my own. Yeah. What was of greatest service? Yeah.
In that case, would you have classified that as rushing? You were rushing to get there.
Oh, absolutely. I designed my life in a way to prevent rushing. As you mentioned earlier, I really, really don't like it. And so I remember with my ex-husband, my first husband. Yeah. Thank you. I said to him, because he and I have very different travel approaches to how we travel. And I basically said something along the lines of, you can do whatever you want when you're doing it by yourself, but when you're traveling with me, this is how I need to do it. And so for anyone listening, if you want to travel with me, and by the way, like invite me on trips and I'm available for that. I will want to arrive at the airport early. I would rather be at the airport bar for an hour having a Chardonnay. And yes, I said Chardonnay. I love it. Than for me to be trying to rush through security to get to the gate on time. That feeling of rushing is so uncomfortable, uncertain, that I go to lengths to avoid it.
Yeah, I've got a story on that. In the airport security line, when we were coming back from retreat in Puerto Rico.
So we were went on a 7-day, 6-night retreat in Puerto Rico earlier this year.
And we took a flight from Vieques, an island of Puerto Rico, to the main island of San Juan.
I remember.
And we did not account that the airport security in Vieques would not secure us to go through San Juan. And so...
yeah, you're right. We didn't know that.
Yeah.
And what's interesting, just quick side note, because we live in Provincetown, where they do have security, from Provincetown to Boston, you're
cleared.
You're behind the security line, and you just move from one gate to the next. And so I think we assumed it would be that same idea.
Right. So when
it was not that idea.
When I booked the flights, I thought that, there's plenty of time in between us leaving Vieques and getting to San Juan, and having enough time to like do whatever we wanted in the airport. Well,
we were gonna sit down and go to a restaurant.
Yeah.
We did not do that.
That was not the case. We arrived after a delayed flight from Vieques to San Juan to a security line that was incredible. I had never seen a security line that large and also chaotic. It was very disorganized. And there was
I had pre-check and you didn't.
Yes.
And I wasn't sure you would get through.
Right. So I looked at that, and there was a moment. The urgency was real. That external stimulus created such a sense of urgency. And I was like, oh my goodness. And there was a moment that I started rushing. Like I wasn't in my body. I was in my head trying to get to the destination and going through every doomsday scenario that was present in my imagination. And then I took a moment and I said, hold on, let's ground ourselves. I just came off of 7 days of being on retreat. I have a bunch of tools right now. And so I steadied myself and I thought strategically, and I moved with purpose, and I moved quickly, and I made quick decisions that ultimately resulted in me getting escorted through the security line, through the back way, and to an open line.
So urgency was the catalyst. And then from that place, we can go into skillful or unskillful. And your story demonstrates beautifully how that can be a thin line. And I'm on the verge of either, right? So urgency isn't bad. In the same way that stress isn't bad.
Correct.
Right?
Judgment's not bad, right? These are just things.
Yeah, right. And so then how do we work with them? How do we experience them? How do we metabolize them? How do we
become aware of them?
Yeah.
Right. Like this is a stimulus that has started to create something inside of me. And now I get to either react if I'm unaware of what's happening, or I can respond because I've brought in attention to it.
Yeah. So what did you do? You talked to a security?
I talked to a security agent who I could see was at her wit's end as well. And I didn't I wasn't pleading. I wasn't begging. I just was calm with her. And I just told her the situation. And I asked if there was anything we could do. And in stark contrast, I will say, was a couple right next to me who had their 2 little chihuahuas that were
Chihuahuas?
Chihuahuas. I don't know. I'm from upstate New York with a very small population, so I don't say all the words.
Well, your last name is Bomyea.
Bomyea.
So Chihuahua.
Yeah, Chihuahua.
Okay,
Chihuahua.
I've always called them chihuahuas, but now they're chihuahuas. So two chihuahuas
Yes.
wowing.
Two service animal chihuahuas, I
Okay.
mind you.
Wow.
Who
Wait, did you hear what I just
who
said? I said wow.
who the couple did not realize that they had to go through like some extra security for, and they were about to miss their flight, and they were rushing. They were in such a reactive state. I could feel it. You can feel when somebody's rushing. You can feel when somebody's in a hurry and not like mindfully moving, right? They're not with you. They are somewhere else. They are trying to get somewhere else. And it was really interesting to see how they interacted with the security agent and how I was reacting. Like could almost
Mm,
like feel the energy between them. This security agent was
yeah.
like pushing back, like she was like, "Whoa, this is a lot coming at me right now." Versus mine was like I was still moving at the same velocity as them. My speed was still up. My energy was down though.
Yeah. Yeah, it's different. And by the way, if you're listening, I think it's really tricky.
Yeah,
I think it
razor thin.
I think it requires having tools. So for an embodiment podcast, embodiment practice, shamanic yogic practice can provide you with tools when you're in that moment. And I can't tell you, by the way, how many times I've been in line doing breath work because, you know, airports are a really fascinating part of human culture. It feels a little competitive. It often feels rushed or then very delayed, all kinds of feelings that aren't great. And it's one of the places in real life when I'm like meandering through my day where I'm practicing the most because, at any moment I could start to feel overwhelmed with urgency or delay or powerlessness or whatever. And so having tools and trying to meet the moment and also being gentle. Oh, something might happen and you might get a surge of anxiety. So the goal in that moment wouldn't necessarily be to not look like you are impacted by it at all, but rather make a choice so that while it's impacting you, you're still choosing from a place of awareness. So for those of you, I'm sure if you've watched, I sometimes get really red. I often get really red. I get red for a lot of reasons. I'm a person who blushes. It gives me away a lot. And I might get anxious and then get really red. But what ultimately matters would then be, can I use my tools and still make choices? Or do I start to kind of crumble under it? And the practices help me to crumble slower or to not crumble. And I think the more we practice, the more we get there. So a thing I've done now is wrap my head around, I might miss my flight. And I let that be, I'm going to do what I can and go as I can go. And then if I miss my flight, I'm going to make new choices at that point.
I love that. There's urgency, but the choice has been made that it's less about the destination now. It's more about being in the moment.
Mm.
Rushing to me is like I'm rushing to something. I'm rushing to an expected outcome, to a destination, and that's where my head's at. My
Well,
head is like laser focused on that I've missed out on where I'm actually at. And so by saying, "Oh, I could miss my flight," like now the destination is still important. I'm not saying the destination doesn't matter. I'm saying the destination matters maybe a little less.
well, it sounds like what you're talking about is attachment because when I'm rushing, I'm attached to one particular outcome. I get on this flight to arrive at this time because I have this thing to do at that place with these people. And I have definitely felt that. And so the practice I brought up about I might miss this flight is a practice of non attachment. And it's helpful if you can do it because the truth is, some of these things are going to be outside of your control. And you can be as prepared as you want and still, like the bike example at Al-Anon. I went with plenty of time. I didn't factor that it would take me such a long time to find an open docking station. So that was outside of my control. We have to try to use our tools and recognize what we can do and then what we can't do. And what I can't do is change how quickly the security line is moving.
Exactly. Like there is so much that can create a sense of urgency inside of us that is outside of our control. I actually really love the bike example because cities, you painted this picture of being in the environment, and you also spoke of developing a quickness by living in a city. And our environments have such an impact on us because all of that is stimulus that could be creating a sense of urgency. And then it's how do you move with that? That I think is really, really interesting and powerful.
Yes, I think New York City, as an example, does lend itself to a quicker pace. And for any number of reasons, I feel comfortable in that pace. I recognize that there are other places have a different pace, and I have enjoyed other paces, but it all comes down to purpose, mission. In New York City, I was moving quickly because I was running from one thing to the next that I loved or had to do, but mostly that I loved, um, because it's a very ambitious place. If we go back to the yogic, Ayurvedic, I have to imagine that New York City is probably a very Rajasic place to be. A lot of people go there with ambition, goal, purpose, desire. Um, and so, yeah, then I moved to a small town and I'm like, why is this taking so long? Or like, why are you walking so slowly? And I've actually had to check myself. Like, well, they're in Provincetown right now. And they might just be on a walk like play, like an activity you do with no purpose
No
other than
agenda.
then to enjoy the. And here I am being like, well, we should get where we're going.
Last night at the Embodiment Circle, I brought walking meditation to help people study that.
Mm,
Where like I demonstrated, I was like, I set up 2 candles 10 paces apart, and I also set up a set of candles at the midway point. And the instruction was walk from candle 1 to candle 2, turn around and walk back to candle 1. And notice as you're walking how your pace changes and what happens like as you approach your destination. Like notice do you have a desire to get to the end? Like what
mm,
what are you rushing to? What is your sense of urgency here? Or are you mindfully moving? And so, in the example of like now taking that out into the real world, where somebody might be mindfully moving through their walk, right? Regardless of the pace, right? It could be really fast. It could be a fast paced walk, and they're still mindfully moving from it because they're moving with purpose and passion from one thing to the next, and they're still present in the moment. They are just moving quickly. And then there's other ways of doing that where it's like, oh, I'm moving at a slower pace, but I'm still here, still present, right? And but the interesting comparison of like what did that bring up in you? Like to see somebody moving slowly while you were trying to move quickly.
mm.
Like did you get a sense of I'm rushing someplace and they're not rushing someplace like or like
Well,
what was the
I will share an example. I was flying back to Boston, and there was a connection in Atlanta. And Atlanta is, I don't know if this is regular, but you land, if from an international flight you land, you have to go back through security. Uh, is that typical? I don't know. It's wild to me. I don't understand why that's true. I guess unless you don't trust the international security. Anyway, um, so it just so happened that on this flight, I had already started feeling the symptoms of the flu. I felt really bad. And it was all the strength I could muster to get on this first flight. Well, it turns out our flight was delayed. And then, so we had like a very short amount of time in Atlanta to run to security, go through it, and then find our gate. And I remember getting off the plane, and there was this couple, this older couple, and the woman was sort of, it felt entitled to me, but I didn't feel well, and I want to be generous. She's like, well, like, aren't we all going to the same place? And I remember me and my travel companion, my ex-husband,
First
like,
husband.
yeah, my first husband. No, we're not. Like, do you think I would be moving like this? Now, she didn't know I didn't feel well, but like, do you think that I'm moving like this for no reason? Now, it is possible I could have been. But no, I'm like, if I could do this slowly or casually, I would absolutely have done it. I had to be moving that fast. And I can promise you in this particular moment, I was not loving it. And it's actually one of my favorite stories about my marriage was that almost always I was the faster walker. I'd be like, can we hurry up? Can we go? Whatever. And I remember in this particular moment, because there was urgency, we were going to miss our flight. Brian turned around and was like, Tim, he's like, can we go any faster? And I remember I looked up at him and I was like, this is all I've got. Like I'm giving you 100% of what I've got to give.
Mm-hmm.
And it was really diminished. I was like in the throes of the flu. Fun fact, I got on the flight and immediately threw up into one of those bags. The guy next to me moved his seat. We flew home, thank God. And then I found out later from a friend who works in the airlines, they're like, I can't believe they let you fly. Because apparently if you get sick like that, they can take you off the plane.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either. And I feel really grateful because I would have because then I got home and I laid in bed for, I think 3 days of just in bed. And then like another 2.5 weeks of I'm fine enough, but don't feel well. I would have done that in an Atlanta hotel. Anyway, urgency.
Yeah.
Okay. That was a long story. Yeah.
Urgency. In that case, there was two things creating urgency from what I heard. One, the external
Mhm.
of destination of, trying to get home. And there's a bunch of things creating this urgency. I might miss my flight. People are moving slowly. We're a long ways away. We have to go back through security, et cetera, et cetera. There's also the internal urgency of like sickness. Like what is my body about to do? And I think this goes back and less about the biological part of it. I just want to go back to the first story that you shared about like being able to create urgency in self.
Mhm.
We've talked a lot about external factors, the environment, having that impact. How can our internal dialogue and our internal systems create urgency? And how can we use that in our favor?
I think through care, through investment, through some kind of connection. The example I'll give is when I have a really busy day and my dog has been home, I bike quickly back home to her. Not because she's texting me, why aren't you home? Or, what have you been up to? But I love you. And I just want to get to you as quickly as I can so that you can have the things that you need because I love you. So I think care, passion, purpose, mission, discipline, commitment.
So here, responsibility. Responsibility can create a big urgency in us.
Yeah, it can, right. But I think the difference is if we're going to create it from the inside out, it'll be responsibility we've given to ourselves. We can get responsibility from other things. Oh, I have to go to work, or my boss is going to be mad, or I'm going to get written up, or they're going to fire me, or I won't have a paycheck, But, and that is also totally valid, by the way. Like, if you have a job, go to work and don't get fired, and But if we want to create it in a healthy way from within, well, what do you really care about? What matters to you so much that you are willing to, and in this case with like the dog, I'm willing to bike home quickly, even if I've been teaching fitness and yoga all day long and I'm tired. I'm willing to ask my legs and core to do more because that love, that care. So if we haven't considered what it is we care about, what it is we are passionate about, and we talk a lot on this podcast about mission and purpose. Like, what is your mission? What is your purpose? Like, what are you doing? We can create healthy urgency when we connect to, well, what is it you're trying to create? Lots of people are disconnected from that for any number of reasons. If you want to create momentum and urgency in your life in the direction of your purpose, like, you have to know your purpose. You have to know what you want to create. And that process can be a bumpy one, but start simple. I love my family, so I'm willing to be urgent for them. I love, fill in the blank.
My dog.
I love my
I
dog.
care for my dog.
I care for my dog.
And I'm going to use care in connection with a responsibility to create urgency that is a spark, that is a call to action for my body to move quickly.
Yeah.
To then be able to get to the destination and accomplish the thing that we're responsible for.
I also want to tell a story. I'm going to tell a story.
Please do.
It's a podcast. We're going to tell stories. I remember being in a dance class in Pittsburgh.
For all of you that didn't know, Tim was a professional dancer.
Thank you. There's like the circle drinking game where apparently you have to drink. When I mentioned that I was a dancer, I was
Herbal
a dancer,
tea or any other beverage of your choice.
yeah. Well, any drink you want, but you have to do a shot of it. I was in an academy, the Civic Light Opera Academy of Musical Theater in Pittsburgh. They're an incredible school. And there was this teacher that there were like 2 or 3 teachers that were like the big deal teachers. And these were the teachers that were going to get you where you needed to be to get into college or into a dance company or whatever. So deep, deep, deep appreciation for the staff at the CLO, Pittsburgh CLO. And I remember this teacher said, he's like, okay, so all of you tall, leggy dancers, like, congratulations, you look so good and people are going to love that. He's like, now you have to move faster. He's like, the movements don't change, the counts don't change, but you are longer and you have farther to go. You have to move faster. And I remember that being a really interesting teaching because you have to be able to fit into that. You can't both be leggy and long and then also move slow. You're going to be off the count. And so it gave me a perspective on urgency, which was, by your nature, all of this is going to feel a little faster. It's not good or bad, but if you want to do it,
if you have a lot of care for it, you've got that passion. Yeah, if I've got longer legs than somebody else and I still have to hit the movement at the same time, yeah, I got to move a little quicker. I'm not going to rush that movement. I'm going to move very purposely for that movement.
Right. So I can consciously move fast without rushing. And then I think any dancer at that level then is, if you rush a movement, that's when you're likely to get hurt, right? So I have to be modulating my movement to fit the music and the choreography without yanking myself around.
Actually, this brings up something for me, which is the sense of urgency that's created inside of me at fitness classes and how I rush in fitness classes. I don't mindfully move most of the time because I think that I have to keep up
No, it's interesting.
and I don't have the pace.
I'm going to pause you.
Okay.
Wait, you've talked about fitness classes as like a challenge for you, but this is the first time you've talked about it from like an urgency pace perspective.
Yeah. Because exactly what you just said, I'm rushing through the movements and I'm doing so unskillfully. And I've hurt myself so many times because I think that I have to do it like them, which is fine to aspire to.
And it's tricky because I'm in the front of the room and I'm doing it quickly
Excellently.
and excellently.
Right. And like I'm light years away from that.
Okay, that was
Right. Like I'm light years away from mimicking that movement. That's for me, it's like, oh, that's created an urgency. And now instead of me mindfully moving and saying, oh, I know where I'm trying to get to. So now let me be in my body and work to getting to that place.
Yeah.
I'm rushing into that movement.
I love that you brought this up because I think fitness is a great example. You know, we do EMOMs every minute on the minute or AMRAPs, as many reps or rounds as possible. And in our culture, I believe, and I have observed that people think faster is better. So if you finish first, then that means something. And when, as a person who designs workouts, I never care. There's never, in an EMOM, for example, you get to, it's really about your rest. Well, how much rest do you get? If you want to take 55 seconds to do this, then you only get 5 seconds rest. Is that enough rest for you? And then, so probably not. Then we need to change your reps. But I think culturally we have an idea of more is better and faster is better. And so we're kind of striving for that. And I think embodiment practice and yogic practice and mindfulness practice and all this is letting us know that faster isn't necessarily better, which is why I say in vinyasa all the time, this practice isn't actually fast. It is continuous and linked. And then, yes, when you get to more advanced asana practice, it can feel fast if you're moving into warrior one and then into chaturanga, right? That's a lot to do and a lot to know. But the intention isn't because I need you to go quickly. The intention is any combination is continuous and linked with breath. And then as we progress it, it can get there. But so when people think vinyasa, they're like, oh, it's a fast. No, it isn't. That was never its intention. I've never read any yogic text that talked about the benefit of doing it quickly.
Studying yoga and being in my teacher training, what I've noticed is like, as my embodied skill in poses improves, as I understand more about how the poses and postures feel in my body, I am able to move quickly through them. I don't rush through them anymore because I understand, because I've sat the postures, I've like studied them, I'm being in them, and I'm understanding more about my anatomy, and as it's moving through space or holding a pose, I'm understanding more of it, so I can be embodied in my movement because I understand it as an experience rather than looking at it just as a visual or an image and creating that as a destination that I'm rushing to.
I don't know why this is coming up for me, but when I was learning about Kirtan singing, the sort of sacred practice of singing mantras and songs, I was always told that there was supposed to be, I've mentioned this before, a sense of longing in your voice. But there's also a sense of urgency, right? A deep desire to be connected to the source in whatever way you conceptualize it, and the importance of that. So I think what we're talking about now, which is really exciting, is urgency can be a beautiful motivating factor. I deeply want to feel more connected. I deeply want to, reach out to my community. I deeply want to move away from my limiting beliefs and into my fullness. And then what do? And so urgency as a spark, beautiful. If it pushes us into rushing, unskillful. If it pushes us into paralysis and like inability to do anything, also unskillful. And so the work then becomes, how do I take urgency, hold it, recognize it, understand it, and then make choices, conscious choices about what I'm going to do. And that's really tricky, especially when the urgency. So if we talk about urgency to like connect to the greater source, you're like, okay, well, I probably have my whole life to try to do that, right? But sometimes urgency is something, an emergency is happening and you have to move right now. And so that's what we have to practice. So in that moment, can I be conscious or will I be a reaction?
That's a boom right there. It's a boom.
If I was holding this mic,
Yeah,
I would drop it. Should I hit the mic?
No, please don't. Oh.
I hit it.
Bratty daddy over there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's a high compliment, by the way.
I think that sums it up really, really beautifully about the nature of urgency and how we can react or we can respond to it. And it can be a really beautiful driving force, also be a destructive, like reactive, like stumbly tumbly all over the place, just taking everything down in its wake. And we can bounce between the two of them very quickly. Like my example at the airport, right? Like I was rushing and then I was able to come down and like work through it. So like, and the line is razor thin. It really is.
Well, some takeaway tools, if we're open to them. One thing is, if you are met with a person who is in the throes of rushing, and lots of really well-intentioned people are in that place, one thing you can do is start to deepen your breath and slow the pace of your words to help them regulate their own nervous system. Will it always work? No. But it has worked a lot, enough. Oh, okay. And what's interesting is that I've been on the receiving end of that and have been grateful for it after the fact. Oh, I was whipping myself up into a thing and they helped me like regulate that thing. A little harder to do the opposite when someone's being really like lethargic and trying to, but it's still possible to bring, you know, an uplifted quality to your voice and like an excitement that can like spur people. We can definitely encourage people in that opposite direction. But my whole point in saying that is we aren't without tools. We aren't just meandering through with like letting the world happen. We can make some choices.
Beautifully said. Thank you for offering those tools out to the world. With that, I'm feeling very complete. How about you?
I also feel complete.
Will you take us out, please?
I will do. Let's take a deep inhale and a full exhale. And it is with deep appreciation and gratitude that we release the archetypes and the spirits that we called in to the sacred space of sharing, awareness, understanding, insight. As we all leave the circle, I wish you all safety. And with these words, our container is open but not broken. Aho.